What's up, everybody? This is the 2024 Subaru Crosstrek, and so about the all-new Crosstrek. Well, it's on a revised version of the Subaru Global platform and is completely different than the previous generation Crosstrek from 2023 and earlier. Now, there are some carryover components, which I'll get to in a minute, mainly the engine and the powertrain, but as far as the styling goes, it's all fresh and all looks really nice. Now, it's interesting, though, they didn't grow this vehicle really over the previous generation, so I think they really felt like they found the sweet spot as far as sizing goes, and unlike most other competitors that are ballooning in size, this stayed with the same size, and I think it's a great size. It still has lots of space and is just, you know, still really well packaged, I think. But anyway, first up front there, you have 8.7 inches of ground clearance here, which is the one big selling point of the Crosstreks. More ground clearance than most other SUVs, and certainly more than most everything this competes with. And so it really just makes this, you know, a little more versatile, a little more off-road ready, and ready for anything you can throw at it, really, than the other competitors. And if you want to go for something even more extreme with the Crosstrek, there's now the wilderness version here coming for 2024 as well, and that's going to give you even more ground clearance, about an extra 0.6 inches of ground clearance, some more rugged components, and a little bit of a beefier setup with different tires and things like that. But anyway, getting back to the regular Crosstrek here, they all come standard with brand new LED headlights here that even swivel whenever you turn the steering wheel, so they, you know, point the beam into the corner. And it's great that now all Crosstreks have great nighttime visibility as standard. Previously, you had to go up to the higher trims in order to get LED lights, and you had those halogens in the old ones. All of them have great nighttime visibility, so great to see that. You also have fog lights here on everything except the base trim. And coming down to the sides, you have 18-inch wheels here on this Limited that I'm standing next to, and also the Sport. You go down to 17s on the lower trims, and of course plenty of body cladding like you're used to here from the Crosstreks. And going out to the back there, you'll see you have the new taillights that are carried over from the new Impreza, and you know, the chunky cladding there on the rear bumper. It has the nice raised roof rails and all that. And overall, I think that it's a really nice look. It nicely modernizes the Crosstrek without changing the formula too much, and I think that most people will think it's a nice improvement. The interior of the 2024 Crosstrek may or may not be an improvement depending on how you feel about giant touchscreens. That's the big change here for 2024, is you have this 11.6-inch touchscreen here as standard on everything except the base model. And even the base model, you have dual 7-inch screens, so even that you can't get away from the screen overload. But anyway, I'll talk more about the screen in a minute, but otherwise this interior has some really nice improvements. So first off, sitting down in these seats, Subaru has redesigned these seats to be more supportive, and in my week of driving here so far, they've been really comfortable, really great seats. And here in the Limited, you have them with leather, and I do really like how you have the perforations here, which help to keep you a little bit cooler here in the summertime. Unfortunately, they're not cooled seats or anything. You do have heated seats here, but Subaru still is not offering cooled seats in the Crosstrek. But you know, it's also nice you can get it in this gray color. There's also an all black leather interior if you want that instead, and all the lower trims will have a cloth interior. The steering wheel here in the Crosstrek is also mostly good. So it has a great 9-3 grip, nice 10-2 notches, and it's nicely leather wrapped here in the top two trims. The lower two trims do not have a leather wrap wheel, unfortunately, still. The other complaint I have about this wheel, though, is that there's a lot of buttons on it. Most other manufacturers can do all the same functions this steering wheel does with less buttons. They have the drive mode selector on the steering wheel. How many Crosstrek owners actually use the drive modes? There's only 2 of them. They don't really make much of a difference anyway. Complete waste of buttons and just clutters up the wheel. You also have 2 separate buttons for changing your following distance for the adaptive cruise. Most other car companies put that into one single button. So I just think the buttons could be redesigned so that it's less busy and overwhelming every time you look at this steering wheel. Moving on to the gauges here, that is one area where it certainly is very simple still. So Subaru continues on with the analog gauges and the tiny little low-res screen in the middle there. But the thing is, they work fine. It does the job, and for most people, I think that's going to be totally fine if it doesn't show you all kinds of cool graphics or anything like many of the other competitors offer these days, with some even having a fully digital cluster. You know, so this is fine, and you know, I don't think anyone's gonna really complain too much, but it would be nice to see some kind of advancement there, at least a little bit. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, though, again, you have this 11.6-inch touchscreen, which is where they put all the technology. It's kind of bizarre. You have like super high tech in the middle, and then still pretty old school with the gauges. But anyway, the touchscreen here works fairly well. Now, you know, I'm very thankful that you have a volume knob and a tune knob. Those are 2 things that a lot of other touchscreen heavy systems do not have anymore. I also like how you have buttons here for your climate control, you know, at least changing the up and down on the climate. And the screen itself works okay. It's not the highest resolution, and it is a little bit laggy, especially the first time you start it up in the morning. There was one time where it was auto playing music, and I kept trying to mute it, and it wouldn't turn off. I think I hit it 6 or 7 times before it finally muted the audio, and so it's just kind of lagging. You can even see when I'm navigating through here, like I was listening to CarPlay music, and then I want to go and listen to satellite radio, and it takes multiple seconds for it to switch over to that. And this would have been excusable if this was the first year of this screen, but this screen's been around in the Outback for, I think, at least 3 or 4 years now. And so the fact that it hasn't improved in all these years makes me think that they just went cheap on the processor and the computing behind this screen, and that it's not just a software bug or something. It's just the system is actually slow because they went cheap with the back end stuff, and it's just unfortunate. Now, I will say one great thing is you have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto with this big screen. The base trim was still going to have wired in CarPlay, but the CarPlay did connect flawlessly every single time, so I have to give it credit for that. It was really nice that it, was issue free as far as that part goes. But the other little thing that annoys me about this screen is the fact that it auto plays your music all the time. And so if you're someone like myself that's either in a playlist or you're at a part in a podcast and you don't want to miss anything, this, every time you get in the car, is going to start auto playing that stuff automatically. And even whenever you go to turn off the stereo, it just mutes it, and it's still playing, or it's still, progressing in the background, even though it's not putting out any sound. And Subaru isn't the only one that does this. There's a few others, GM and 1 or 2 others, that still do that. I don't know why they think that's better, but that's their choice here for this. It's just one other thing you always have to make sure you manually go and pause your music every time before you get out of this vehicle so that it doesn't start auto playing when you get back in. But one thing I'm actually happy to report is that unlike other versions of this infotainment system, this one has physical heated seat controls. And a lot of people joke in other reviews because these heated seat controls are probably from the early 2000s. I mean, they are very cheap and old-fashioned, but honestly, I'd take this over the screen-based controls you have in the Outback and some of the others where it's built into the screen, and that's, high-tech and removes some buttons, but it means that that's another thing that gets laggy, and when you turn on this vehicle in an Outback or something, you have to wait around for that. So I like having the physical controls here for the heated seats. Even if they are ancient, I'll take it. Also, this infotainment system is hooked up to this Harman Kardon stereo, and previously in other Crosstreks in the past that had a Harman Kardon upgrade, it was an 8-speaker stereo. Now it's a 10-speaker stereo, so a little bit of a better sound, and it's 432 equivalent watts, they say, and I'm actually really impressed. It's not the best in this segment. I think that crown still goes to the Bose system and the Mazda CX-30, but this is a close runner-up, and it sounds fantastic. It's a really good sounding stereo, and I was pleasantly surprised, because usually these Harman Kardon stereos and Subarus aren't anything overly impressive, but this one actually really impressed me, and they did a great job with it. Other things here, so you have a wireless charging pad here for the first time in a Crosstrek, alongside a USB, USB-C, and an auxiliary jack. I think this is one of the last new cars on the market with an auxiliary jack, as far as 2024 models go, but Subaru decided to keep it around for whatever reason. You also have nice deep pockets in the doors here with a bottle holder. You have 2 cup holders here next to a power outlet and another little slot here for something small, and then the center armrest is nice and softly padded. You open that up and you have a nice deep cubby in there. My only other little complaint I will say about this interior is that right around the shifter area here you have gloss black plastic, and as you can see, someone that had this vehicle before me already left a nice big scratch in it. It's already dusty, doesn't look good, and thankfully there isn't any gloss black plastic anywhere else in this vehicle, so they did a great job of not including that, except in this one spot. I really wish they would put some kind of other material there. Moving on to the back seat here in the Crosstrek, this is one of the areas where they do such a good job with packaging, and me being 5'9", sitting behind myself, I still have several inches of legroom to spare there. Plenty of headroom, of course, thanks to the more boxy shape as well, but just, in subcompact crossovers in this segment, there are very few that have more space than this. I think the Chevy Trax, the Buick Envista, and maybe the Volkswagen Taos have a little bit more space, but I think those are the only ones. Everything else is going to have a tighter back seat than this, and that's really one of the key selling points, I think, of the Crosstrek, is you have the nice small packaging, but you still have a real usable back seat. As you can see, we have our large convertible car seat there mounted, and it's, fitting in there totally fine, and you can actually still fit a passenger in this front seat without their knees being shoved into the dashboard there. And so, again, something that is not common in this segment. A lot of other vehicles, it's like this passenger seat becomes unusable with a large seat in the back there. So really well done from a packaging standpoint. You also will see when you look forward, they have a USB and a USB-C jack. Unfortunately, no air vents though, but you do have a fold-down center armrest as well, and pocket holders in the doors. Then moving on to the cargo space here in the Crosstrek, it's about the same as the previous generation, and that's pretty good. It's pretty usable. I don't think it's actually the biggest in this segment, these days. I think, again, the Trax, the Vista and the Taos probably are still going to be the kings as far as rear cargo space goes, but it still is, you know, a pretty long, pretty wide space. It's nice you have the cup holders there on the sides, but you know, it's not quite as huge as, you know, some of the best out there in this segment these days. The Ford Bronco Sport also has a bigger cargo space as well. But anyway, and then whenever you lift up the floor there, you will see that you have a spare tire, which is also something that's getting more and more rare these days. And so really great that Subaru still includes that spare tire. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Crosstrek here has Subaru's key they've used for the past few years now, but it's a nice key. It has some metal trim here on the sides, not too big, not too small, just a really nice key. But of course it is keyless access and then keyless entry and push button start here on everything except the base trim. The base trim still has a twist key and, you know, still has the remote to unlock it, but has a twist key, but everything else gets a push button start here, you know, from beyond the base trim. And so anyways, put the foot on the brake, hit the engine start button here, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2024 Crosstrek. So the first thing you'll notice about the new Crosstrek, I think the first thing that I'm noticing here is that you have excellent visibility. I think that's what you're really going to appreciate. You have a nice high seating position here, huge windshield, some of the thinnest A-pillars in this segment and just in the industry in general, just such good forward visibility. View out of the back is also great, you know, having the nice big hatch. And so, you know, very easy to see where you're going. And of course, you have all the safety tech here as well to help you out, you know, in addition to, you know, the great visibility. But other things to note, if you are familiar with any other Subaru from the past 10 or 15 years, you'll probably feel right at home here in this. Throttle response is the same as every other Subaru, really, especially the ones with the CVT that we've been used to here for the past, you know, 10 years. But that means it's very responsive, very, you know, just straightforward. Brakes also are really great, where they're kind of dead towards the first, you know, third of the pedal travel, and then they start to bite towards, you know, halfway down there, and still feel really good, nice and responsive. You get used to it very easily, very quickly here. Other things, so now this refined version of the Subaru Global platform for the 2024 Crosstrek here is supposed to be stiffer by about 10% for the rigidity, and that also allows them to say it's going to be better performing and also quieter. We will judge both of those things here during this review, but I do have to say it's really smooth and quiet, and I think also that extra rigidity allowed them to make the ride a little softer and a little smoother. And it's been a couple of years since I drove the last gen Crosstrek, but I did test out the last gen with the 2.5, and this, I mean, seems like it's incrementally smoother. Again, from my memory, not like the previous Crosstrek was, you know, rough or uncomfortable in any way. But I just have to say this is still very smooth, very, very comfortable, soaks up bumps very well, imperfect pavement, all that. Other things here. So the CVT transmission in these is actually not bad for the naturally aspirated versions. Whenever you add the turbo in other Subarus, it can get a little confused. But with the naturally aspirated engines here, it's really straightforward, works really well, and I actually have no complaints with it. You know, typically CVTs aren't the sportiest performers. If you do want to be sporty with it, it does have a manual mode. You can use the paddle shifters and go through 8 predefined gear ratios. But you know, in the background though, whenever you're just cruising around, it usually does a really good job of, you know, feeling pretty natural, doing what you want it to do, and really responsive. So I actually have no complaints. It's always delivered the power I've been looking for every time I put my foot down this week, and it's been really good in that regard. But Subaru has said that this CVT is smoother and quieter now for 2024. But one other transmission thing to note is there is no manual transmission available anymore. It's all automatic only here, which is unfortunate for those of you that enjoyed that manual in the base trim. Unfortunately, though, no longer available. So anyway, let's turn down onto this background. I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the Sport SI drive mode here for a little bit of a sharper throttle response. That's all it changes, by the way. And yeah, let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. Here we go. See, nice and responsive as soon as I put my foot down. And it does, you know, try and, you know, do normal shift points there. It did kind of shift at that red line and change to a different ratio. So it feels pretty natural. It's not like it's just sitting at red line the whole time like some other CVTs sometimes do. And power is okay. So that's the real nice thing is, you know, you have the upgraded 2.5 liter boxer, 4-cylinder, still naturally aspirated, but it has 182 horsepower, 178 pound-feet of torque here, and that is about 30 more horsepower than the base Crosstrek and what you get in the base and the premium trims. When you go up to the Sport and the Limited, you'll get this more powerful engine, and it is certainly an improvement. It is an improvement for sure. I think the 0 to 60 time drops from like 9.1 seconds for that base engine down to like a 7.8 seconds 0 to 60, so a little over a second quicker. And it's fine, it's just still unremarkable. So, you know, it's just going to come down to, obviously this is the better of the two engines if you are someone who cares about straight line performance, but it's still just kind of underwhelming. So if you don't care that much about power, I would strongly recommend just sticking with the base engine, because they're both going to be fairly slow. And whenever I had this loaded up with the whole family, this past week, it still felt pretty sluggish, and I kept wanting for more power on several occasions. So it's not like this engine magically fixes the power problem here of the Crosstrek. But anyway, on this slightly rougher road that we're on now, generates some more road noise. You do hear a little bit of noise, but it's actually still really quiet. But anyway, we're kind of some corners here I always take, and let's see how the Crosstrek handles. So we're just on these 225 wide all-season tires, and they do a totally fine job here. The great thing about the Crosstrek, you still have the lower center of gravity thanks to the boxer engine, despite the fact this has that awesome 8.7 inches of ground clearance. So what it's going to feel like is just going to handle much better than anything else with this much ground clearance. Way better handling. It's really flat, really composed. This new platform does a really good job of just feeling very stable, very just composed, and feels great. Now, a few other changes here for handling is that you have the steering rack from the WRX now, so it's a little bit more responsive. Still is fairly light, not overly heavy or anything, but just feels really nice and really good. And yeah, I just really like the way that this thing handles. It's also not too heavy. These only weigh about 3350 for the curb weight, so not bad at all these days. With so many other things being 4,000 pounds automatically, this thing's nice and light, and it feels like that in corners, which is great. You also have active torque vectoring now here in the Crosstrek, and so that's going to help you with handling as well, to break an inside wheel there to help the nose tuck in a little bit better. And it does have, like I said, really great handling, and I think it's really impressive. It's just such a smooth and comfortable ride, yet it still handles so well and has so much ground clearance. It is really something that only Subaru can do, I think, honestly, because of the platform and the engine setup and all that. And it is one real nice advantage here of these for sure. Also, another huge Subaru perk, of course, is the symmetrical all-wheel drive system. It's mechanically linked all-wheel drive, with many others doing like an e-axle these days and some other more advanced stuff. Subaru's still got the good old-fashioned all-wheel drive system here, and it's also now paired up with this dual mode X mode system you get in these upper trims with the 2.5, and so that's going to give you not only just the regular like snow and dirt mode, but also a deep snow and a mud mode to give you some extra slip there if you need it, and allow this thing to get a little more off-road ready in that mode. And so it's great you have that. You also have hill descent control here, and just overall going to be, again, more capable off-road than most of the other competitors, just because of that ground clearance. Some of the others have more tricks up their sleeve and are more off-road focused, but again, there is now the Crosstrek Wilderness to answer the call of those who want to have more off-road capability than what a regular Crosstrek provides, and that's going to be a really great choice, and hopefully I'll be able to cover that here in a later review. But they'll give you that more capability, better tires, more ground clearance, and a little bit different gearing as well to help it to climb better and all that. But as far as regular Crosstreks, that's why people love them. They're still just so capable, so just ready for adventure, ready for anything, and this new one doesn't change from that whatsoever. And now let's merge onto the highway here. So it works hard and gets us up to some highway speeds here pretty well. So, it's totally fine. Once again, just be prepared. There are much faster options in this segment these days, but again, for the average driver, I think it's going to be totally fine. You can do all your merging and all that without too much issue. But now we are out on the highway here, and I'm going to turn on the adaptive cruise control system. It was just beeping at me because of the lane departure alert, even though I had just put on my turn signal, but it's a little overreactive for that lane departure warning, and I'll talk more about that safety stuff in a minute. But we'll turn on the adaptive cruise control system here, which is standard, by the way, now for 2024. You get adaptive cruise as standard as part of the EyeSight safety suite here. So you have that. Not only do you have that, though, you also have automatic emergency braking, of course, the lane keeping assist, and all that. But adaptive cruise used to be this very high-tech thing, and now it's standard, and it's great. You also do have, again, that steering assist, so I'm going to put all that stuff on here. We'll test it out. We have a gentle corner here coming up, and the Subaru system in the past for the EyeSight has been really good. For 2024, it's also improved because it now has a wider field of view for the camera lenses there for the EyeSight, so it's able to pick up pedestrians and cyclists and stuff better than it used to in the past. and it's doing a really good job here so far. Subaru system, in my experience, has been one of the better systems as far as keeping you centered in the lane whenever you're driving on the highway, but it still isn't perfect. There have been a few times where it's let me down, where it's lost track of the road lines in other vehicles in the past, but so far with my week of the Crosstrek, it's been pretty flawless. And thankfully, it seems like they've also, with this revision of eyesight, they've dialed back the beeps and the annoyances of this system, because previous Subarus, they were like non-stop beeping and just always doing something. It would beep whenever a car would come in front of you, whenever a car would leave your lane, whenever like anything happened out in the world, it would beep at you to let you know. Now it's only beeped to me a couple of times again for that slightly overreactive lane departure alert, but aside from that, it's actually been quiet all week, thankfully. I was very relieved that this thing wasn't pestering me all week like previous model year Subarus have done. And yeah, that was another gentle corner there where I was kind of letting it do most of the steering, just kind of hovering my hands there. And it's doing a really good job. So I think it's a really nice system to have, especially now that it's standard. You don't really have to pay anything extra for that adaptive cruise and lane keep assist. So it's great. Now, one thing though, you know, Subaru's really big on safety, but while other companies are making blind spot monitoring standard these days, Subaru still charges you extra for blind spot monitoring now. And so you have to pay that. It's part of a package that not only gives you the blind spot monitoring, but also gives you emergency steering assist. So basically it will stay in your lane, but if it thinks it can steer out of the way within the lane to avoid an accident, it will do that for you if it sees that you're not doing that in time. It also has rear automatic emergency braking as well, so if it sees something with the radar sensors there, it will stop automatically. So it has those advanced things there bundled in with that blind spot monitoring. So if you get that extra safety package, you get it all. You can't pick and choose, but it just, these days, again, it'd be nice to get blind spot monitoring as standard, not have to pay some big expensive package in order to have, you know, blind spot monitoring, which isn't an extravagant thing to expect here in the 2024 model year. But aside from that little critique, you know, it's still really great for all the safety tech here you have. And also, you have automatic high beams as standard. They're paired up with these standard LED headlights, which again give you that better nighttime visibility, better safety tech there as well. But as we're revving a bunch just to climb a hill, the last couple of things I mentioned here are my fuel economy I got during this week, and also the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So as far as fuel economy goes, here with the 2.5 liter engine, they're rated at 26 mpg in the city, 33 on the highway, and 29 combined. In my driving here, which was mostly around town suburban driving, nothing too grueling with the stop and go stuff, but also not really too much highway driving. Anyway, I've been getting 26.1 mpg, so I'm hitting that city rating exactly, and that's pretty good. You know, typically I get maybe 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating in a lot of the vehicles I review on these same roads, so I'm fairly happy with that, but it's kind of unimpressive. The only impressive thing I can say about that fuel economy is that you only lose 1 mpg going for this half-liter bigger engine compared to the 2-liter. That one only manages to do 1 mpg higher in the city and the highway. The combined rating is actually the same, 29. So that's one good thing. If you upgrade to this engine, you don't have to really pay a fuel economy penalty. But aside from that, though, I mean, 26 is very lackluster for this segment. I mean, there's stuff, even larger vehicles in the next segment up that get better fuel economy without even using a hybrid system. And if you do want to have good fuel economy, the king in the subcompact segment especially is going to be the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid. That's now the only hybrid in this segment, since Subaru dropped the plug-in hybrid powertrain they had for the previous generation Crosstrek. They said that's not returning, by the way, so don't hold your breath for that one, which is really unfortunate. I hope they do some type of hybridized version of the Crosstrek someday. But in the meantime, if you want good fuel economy, I had one of those Corolla Cross hybrids for a week, and I mean, I was getting over like 40 mpg in that thing. It's really impressive, the kind of fuel economy you get, and you get more power in that as well, and you know, still very similar amounts of space to this, and something worth considering if you do care about fuel economy. Check out the Corolla Cross Hybrid. But for anyone else who doesn't really care, you know, just 26 is what you're going to be getting here, at least in my experience. The last thing to mention, though, is the pricing and how this compares to the competition. So one really impressive thing is that they didn't really raise prices. They're the same before destination as the previous generation for 2022. So it starts at $25,000, and with destination it's $26,290 to start. And then this one, as tested, is a limited trim, and this one comes in at $34,635. So this is really loaded up, and you know, but it really just, it doesn't have that much different than even like the premium trim, which is, you know, like $28,000 or so. You know, they still have the same screens, you still have everything. It's just that, you know, with this you have the leather, and this one has the package added on for the Harman Kardon and the moonroof, which by the way doesn't even come standard on the limited. You think it would, but you still have to pay on a limited trim extra to get a moonroof and the nice stereo. So, you know, I think the Limited isn't really going to be the value for everyone unless you must have leather. I think the better value is really going to be those lower trims, in particular that premium trim. The base trim is also fine. I mean, you really don't miss out on too much, and I think some people may actually prefer the dual 7-inch screen versus this you know, big 11-inch thing. But even if you want to have, you know, the heated seats and you want to have some of that stuff, you can get that stuff in the premium. And again, they're all going to be fairly slow, so I mean, even though this engine's nice to have, and it's not a cheap upgrade, but it's, I think, about $2,800 extra to go from like the premium to the sport trim, which is pretty similar as far as the stuff you get aside from, you know, that bigger engine. But you know, I really think the strength is the fact that you have those really cheap entry-level models, and I think for most people in this segment that are Crosstrek buyers, I really think most of them probably do go for those lower trims, and for good reason. I think they're the better value of the bunch. Once you get up to this limited trim, it really gets harder to justify. So the big thing, my favorite crossover in this subcompact segment is the Mazda CX-30. Now, it has less cargo space, less rear seat room, certainly feels a little more cramped than this does, but it's way more luxurious. It's got more horsepower, and whenever you get up to, you know, 34,000, especially if you do care about luxury and you want leather and stuff, the CX-30, you can get almost the turbo version for only $1,000 more, that has 250 horsepower, gives you that turbo engine that, you know, a lot of Crosstrek buyers probably would want to have. It's actually fun to drive and very luxurious. Everything's padded in leather and soft materials. There's metal in the interior, and all the buttons feel amazing. The CX-30 is just a class above this, and it's basically the same price. Very, very close in price. So if you need the extra space of this, the CX-30 can't provide that, so I can see going for this over that. But otherwise, if you do care about a luxurious experience, CX-30 is the way to go. If you want more power, CX-30 Turbo is the way to go. I also have to say that, you know, it really comes down to how much you need the extra ground clearance. I know a lot of people really like the, like, you know, go anywhere, do anything, like if the world ends tomorrow, I'll be fine because I'm in my Crosstrek kind of mentality. But you can save a few $1,000s also by just going for an Impreza, which is the same. You have the same interior, you have the same styling aside from, you know, the lack of body cladding and the extra ground clearance. But the Imprezas start about $2,000 less, and you know, even as you go up the trim ladder there, you can get a very nice Impreza for still just like mid-20s. And I think, you know, again, there's just some money to be saved there if you don't need the extra ground clearance and the rugged thing. It still has all-wheel drive in the Impreza, of course. It still, you know, drives just as nice as this does, and actually handles, I think, slightly better. And then the only other competitor I do want to mention very briefly is the Honda HR-V. I was really impressed with the new generation HR-V. Now, it's also really slow, just as slow as a base Crosstrek, but again, if power doesn't matter to you, that's also really plush, comes in a little cheaper, and still has really great amounts of rear leg room, good amount of cargo space, and they really did a good job with the new HR-V as well. So I think that's another very strong competitor, and definitely something worth checking out that I think kind of undercuts this. Again, once you start to go up to those more luxurious trims, if you want something that's more luxurious, that has padding everywhere, no hard plastic like this has, you know, hard plastic everywhere. Again, that's all personal preference stuff, but the new HR-V interior just feels a little more plush to me. And so, you know, for me, someone who enjoys those extra creature comforts, I think I'd rather spend a week in an HR-V than the Crosstrek here. But, you know, the Crosstrek certainly has an undeniable appeal to it. It's sold in huge numbers. It continues to now be Subaru's #1 seller. They sold over 150,000 of these things last year. I mean, they are a red hot seller. People love them, and for good reason. I mean, my parents have had Crosstreks, my in-laws have Crosstreks, everyone I know has Crosstreks, and they're great cars. They really are. And I think this new one just, you know, incrementally improves everything just a little bit more, makes it a little bit better. But thank you all very much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on the Crosstrek in the comments below. Please also leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming. Huge thanks to Subaru for providing me here with this Crosstrek to review for you guys today. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care.